Yes, this is my, yes, thank you for coming. My name is Aaron Likens, Autism Ambassador for Easter Seals, also author of the book Finding Kansas. And as mentioned, my most recent live presentation was here February 18th, 2020. So you're in for a treat either for a good reason or a bad reason, because remembering what's going on up here, it's not like I'm nervous or anything. Well, anyway, yes, I did write the book Finding Kansas. It's about my life with Asperger's, and myself, I was diagnosed later in life, age 20. But just because I got diagnosed later in life, all the signs were there ahead of time, but really nobody knew what to make of me growing up, especially in school. And there were a lot of signs in school, but of course back then nobody knew it. And it started in kindergarten, and I have to say I loved kindergarten, because in kindergarten we got to play with these very fun thin-sided blocks. There was a six-sided honeycomb thing, orange square, green triangle, blue diamond, and putting those together, sensory-wise, oh, I didn't want to say my life peaked in kindergarten, but I have not found anything as fun as those blocks. Those blocks were, oh, they were a good time. But my classmates, they tried to join in the fun, and here was the problem. They sort of did it wrong. Maybe they used a little bit too much yellow over here, maybe a little bit too much orange over there, but they were doing it wrong, so I would go over and tell them. Actually, no, I'd go over and destroy what they were doing, and I'd say, no, you're doing it wrong, destroy it, because in my mind, there's the right way, and in everybody else's mind is the wrong way, but that's a conversation for another day, because I still may think that from time to time. Or all the time. But in any event, after a couple of weeks, none of my classmates joined in the fun, and I was okay with that because they didn't know what they were doing. In kindergarten, though, I did attempt to socialize with my classmates. I didn't do it in the most traditional of ways, but I tried. I grew up in Indianapolis, where in the springtime, severe weather, a constant threat. And here's the thing about weather. One, I was absolutely really interested by it. Number two, I was absolutely deathly afraid of it. I was sure every single day a tornado was going to come and wipe Indianapolis clean off the map. I was sure of it. So picture this, I'm having a conversation with my classmate, about very simple topics such as the National Weather Service and the threat of a tornado watch because of the jet stream that's intermingling with the low pressure system that's being influenced by a cold front that's going to bring up some of the Gulf moisture. Yeah, my classmates, naturally, they just slowly backed away from me when I started speaking like that, which, me being on the autism spectrum, I'm not going to pick up if you're happy, sad, mad, bored, so as they backed away from me, well, myself, I just kept up within perfect stride with them, giving them more weather information than they could ever possibly use, and loved every single minute of it. Well, it took most of the school year, but eventually I realized nobody my own age was listening to me. Oh, thank you. That's better. Going through school, let's see, where was I? First grade. So kindergarten, nobody my own age was listening to a word I was saying, so I gravitated towards talking to adults, either because they knew what I was talking about, or they were very good at pretending on knowing what I was talking about. And in first grade, I loved recess. Oh, I gotta say, I love recess. Most first graders do love recess because you can run around, be loud, be obnoxious. Myself, oh no, that wasn't recess. Recess for me was known as a 30-minute monologue with the teacher. It was great. So every morning I would draw a weather map and deliver the weather forecast. And on Mondays, Mondays were awesome because they were home with a 5-day forecast. So Mondays I really brought it home. And well, growing up in Indianapolis, auto racing is a sport of choice. So on Mondays and Tuesdays, I give a race recap of the previous weekend's races. Thursdays and Fridays would be race previews. And again, I gotta say, I love those recesses. My first grade teacher, on the other hand, with about a month to go in the school year, she finally had enough. And she looked at me and she said, Aaron, if you don't go play with the other kids right now, you are never going to recess again. Probably not the best thing to tell a first grader, but knowing what I know now, I can't believe it took her that long to finally issue that ultimatum, because I talk nonstop, 30 minutes every single day, and oh, memories. Well, second grade came around, new problem popped up. This problem, well, I learned the patterns of my school's fire drills. Now that may not sound like that big of a deal, but a high percentage of us on the autism spectrum, roughly 80% of those on the autism spectrum will have a sensory issue in one form or another. Now for some individuals, it may be certain types of fabrics. I know for myself, jeans do feel like sandpaper, but I can tolerate it. Other people, maybe certain types of lights or flashing patterns could be too much, but for me, I do have sensory issues, and it is to sound. And when I say sensory issue to sound, so often people think I'm talking about something that just hurts in the ears. That's not the case. I can describe a sensory issue for myself by sound in one of three different ways. One, oddly enough, for a fire alarm, it sort of makes me feel like I have fire flowing through my veins. Two, if you've ever been driving and had a close call, somebody pulled out in front of you or you pulled out in front of someone, screeching brakes, almost a collision, you know, that heart rate that's peaked or that surge of adrenaline. Or example three, you're driving down the highway, you come over a crest of the hill, and maybe you're going a little fast, and there's a highway patrolman on the side of the road with the radar pointed in your general vicinity. Even if you're doing the speed limit, you're gonna get that momentary sense of panic as you look down to make sure you aren't going too fast, and then the wonderment on if you're gonna have to pull over. Well, in examples 2 and 3, take that moment of your peak heart rate, your peak adrenaline, amplify it and sustain it. That's the best way I can attempt to describe what a sensory issue feels like. Not pleasant. However, going back to when I was in second grade, here's a problem. Every fire alarm, every fire drill, I look around the room, nobody else was fidgeting. Nobody else looked like they were in any pain. And I said I'm not a good judge if you're happy, sad, mad, bored, but I did understand discomfort. Nobody else had the sense of discomfort that I knew I was having. So I didn't speak up about it. I could only draw 1 to 2 conclusions when I was in second grade. Either everyone else was really, really strong, or I was really, really weak. And in second grade, or any grade for that matter, nobody wants to be labeled the weak one, the wimp, so I didn't speak up about it. Well, further compounding the problem, as I said, I learned the patterns. If we were gonna have a fire drill, it was always on a Thursday, which looking back, that defeats the purpose. Aren't they supposed to be random and not predictable? However, okay, I knew Thursdays, and it was my mission on Thursday mornings not to be in school. It is known that we on the autism spectrum, we will resort to a behavior to get out of an activity or task because for us, that's just a whole lot easier than talking about it. So my behavior, I thought about misbehaving because I knew if someone misbehaved enough, they didn't come to school, but seeing how my dad was a pastor, that tactic really wouldn't work in my household. So I had to get creative, had to get crafty, and my behavior, I became a very good actor. I was eventually nominated for Best Actor in the categories of Best Headache, Throatache, Stomachache that didn't exist. Oh, I put on some award-winning performances, but eventually my dad learned when I was and wasn't sick, so I had to upgrade to stage 2. Thermometer, coffee, works great to have a fever in the morning. Until you press your luck and you show your dad a fever of 107.7, and at that point in time you lose all credibility, the trick never works again, and even when you are sick, you get sent to school because nobody believes you. So that backfired. Well, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, more problems popped up. One was sensory issues. Now, I'm already guilty of this. If you hear a speaker like myself or a clinician talk about autism and sensory issues come up, it's always going to be something to the superlative, to the extreme. Fire alarms, fireworks, screeching brakes. You don't need extreme to have sensory issues. A lot of us on the spectrum are hypersensitive. We're going to hear everything in our environment. Think about your typical 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade classroom. That is a lot of noise, whether it's 2 students over there whispering, 2 over there. Maybe somebody sitting beside you just tapping their pencil on the table. Myself, being hypersensitive, I could hear what was being presented in that classroom and in that classroom. And I gotta say, it was an advantage to hear what was going on in that classroom because that was tomorrow's assignment. Unfortunately, at the same time, it was yesterday's assignment in there, and I couldn't filter all that information out. So hearing what I actually had to hear was just absolutely draining. I say I was a good actor on fire drill day, but come noon about every day, and I've heard this from so many other parents and teachers and individuals on the spectrum that my story is absolutely shared in that first 2-3 hours of school, fine. You get to that 11 o'clock, that noon hour, there's just absolutely nothing left. I had absolutely nothing mentally, and it was hurting me physically. I had horrible headaches, horrible stomach issues. By the afternoon, I was just almost unable to do anything, and that meant after school homework, forget it. I just spent all that time recharging, and then the cycle continued, and well, halfway through 6th grade, the cycle got to the point that I missed half of that first semester due to health issues. So we went to homeschooling. Homeschooling did work great, but a year later, I wanted to go back to school because in my mind, it can't be as hard as I remembered. So I went back and it worked great for 3 days. Then the same patterns of behavior popped up again, and we went back to homeschooling, and that's where I finished up my schooling career. Flash forward 5 years after that. It was a snowy November Saturday, and my dad read an article in Parade magazine. This was really odd. He never read the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. He never read Parade magazine, but I don't know what inspired him on this weekend, but there was an article in the paper about this thing called Asperger's. Before that point in time, I had every diagnosis under the sun. If they had 3 or 4 letters in it, odds are I had the diagnosis at some point in time. And some of those diagnoses did fit 50, 60% of the puzzle, but nothing was that complete fit. When my dad read this thing about Asperger's, it was a scene out of a movie. He dropped the paper where he stood, it slowly fluttered to the ground. It was out of a movie, as he would say. My dad took me to my doctor. The doctor, well, this was now December 2003, autism awareness, nowhere where we are today. My doctor had never heard of Asperger's, so my doctor looked it up, part form of autism. He got out the yellow pages, found an autism center in St. Louis, sent me to go get an assessment. Got the assessment, went back to my doctor, and the doctor was reading the assessment in front of me going, reading this here, yep, Well, there's no doubt about it. You have Asperger's. I don't know what to say. Good luck. Good luck. Okay, that tells me a lot. I too, even though I watched the news a lot growing up, I had a diagnosis and I had never heard of it. So if you're like me, there's only one place to go to for all medical information. That's known as the internet, because everything on the internet's true, right? First thing I read, December 2003, stated that people with Asperger's will never have a job, will never have friends, will never be happy. I, unfortunately, when I read that, that was my introduction. I believed it. And in life, autism spectrum or not, in life, if you believe the no, don'ts, and can'ts, that's exactly what's going to happen. That's what happened to me. I pushed everyone in my life away. I didn't care about any person, any place, anything, and if I could have disappeared, if I could have vanished, I probably would have been okay with that. Well, 15 months after my diagnosis, I don't know what inspired me to. I sat down at my computer and I started to write. And that also is really bizarre because in school, writing was the most awful, painful thing imaginable. Getting me to write a 2-word answer on an essay question, yeah, good luck with that. My number 1 answer was because. Not because anything, no, because was the entire answer. I was always expecting good grades, but my teachers always disagreed with me for some reason. But not only was I writing more than 1 word, I was expressing myself on the emotional level. Growing up, if you ask me anything subjective, anything remotely close to an opinion, I gave you 3 and only 3 words. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. And now I was writing, expressing myself, and I wrote some more, and I never intended on writing a book. I'm an author by accident, and I truly am a public speaker by accident. If you would have told me 12 years ago this is what I would be doing, I would have laughed at you. And I probably would have said, man, that's just downright cruel. Why would you tell me I'm going to do that? Because I'm actually one of the shyest, quietest individuals you'll meet. I know you don't believe me right now, but if you see me outside the realm of a presentation, you'd go, hey, there's no way that's the same person. No, I never intended on any of this. My reason for writing was very simple. I just wanted to tell my parents who I was and why I was, because I couldn't speak it. So I wrote, eventually got the book of Finding Kansas, and I do have to begin with why my book is entitled that. So first and foremost, my book is not a geography lesson. There, I have found Kansas before, unfortunately. That photo I gave a presentation in Rolla, Missouri 6 years ago, and there was a parent there of an individual on the spectrum, but he claimed I was false advertising the state because he said there's more trees in that photo than the entire western half of Kansas. So he claimed I was false advertising the state, which I guess reinforces the fact that Kansas isn't famous for all that much. Secondly, finding Kansas has nothing to do with the Wizard of Oz, which I guess that's the state's only claim to fame, so has nothing to do with that. Thirdly, it's not a treasure hunt, so there's no finding treasure. So what my book is about, obviously, it's about my life with Asperger's. So since I'm not talking about the physical, literal state of Kansas, what am I talking about? Well, envision it this way. What if you were paralyzed in every state from the neck down, except when you cross into the borders of Kansas, everything becomes a little bit more normal. Now, my PowerPoint, this is the same PowerPoint I've used since the beginning, and back then I believed in normal. It took me about 35 years to understand there is no such thing as normal, and if we find that one normal person on the planet, congratulations, we have found the most boring individual in the galaxy. So that's my concept of normal now, but I think the term wanting to be more normal is very appropriate. And when I'm within Kansas, everything becomes just that, just a little bit more normal. So envision it. You're in Kansas, if someone talks to you while you're in Kansas, or rather talks to me while I'm in Kansas, I'm going to be able to have a conversation. I'm going to be able to get my answers out. Let's say I go to another state, such as North Dakota, which, the thing about North Dakota, I've given 1,040 presentations to almost 100,000 people, and I've traveled all around the country, and all that time I've only met one person that claimed to have been from the state of North Dakota. And I didn't check their driver's license, so I can't validate their claim. So I'm under the impression it may not actually exist. It may be a conspiracy for some unknown reason that maybe we were hung up on 49 states and we needed a nice even number. So they just said, no one's going to go there. There's North Dakota. Someday I'm probably going to give a presentation there. I'm going to have to change this story real fast, but until then, North Dakota will be the opposite of Kansas. So when I'm within North Dakota, if you ask me a question, I'm not going to have the answer right away. I'm going to have to think about it. I'm going to have to process it. And processing for us on the autism spectrum can take a little bit longer. Just like that. I know we live in a society where everything is now. But when you ask me a question, I know you're expecting an answer. So I process, and then maybe I'll just fire out, and I don't know. I'm going to fire some sort of answer out just to end it so I'm not stuck playing the processing game. So when I'm within Kansas, everything becomes just that little bit more normal where I'm going to be able to respond and not get stuck in the processing game. So between those two examples of over-processing in North Dakota or being more normal and things just flowing freely in Kansas, where would you choose to live? Hopefully your answer would be Kansas, although I do have to say if you have or if you are planning on driving across the real state of Kansas, I have to apologize right now because that's 8 hours of your life you quite honestly can never get back. I know so. I've driven across it 8 times, so that state owes me 64 hours of my life, but not only that, from Kansas City to Lawrence, it's the Kansas Turnpike. You get the distinct honor and privilege of paying them $2. Well, actually 3 years ago it went up to $2.25. It's as boring as ever. You don't get any more bang for the buck, and no. So what is Kansas besides the most boring drive in the whole earth? Well, Kansas is the activity or interest that a person in the autism spectrum is obsessed with, and as my dad would say, my dad did sort of write this part of my presentation, so he threw that in there. That's probably not the most professional of terms, but won't shut up about. So going back to when I was in school, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, all those. Weather and auto racing, that was Kansas. I would go on and on and on and have no idea that the other person wasn't listening, but I would go on that. And because of that, because we may know all the facts, we may know more information than most people on a topic, if we get that conversation, we're going to feel normal in a way because we're not going to be stuck playing the processing game. Kansas is often heavy in facts. If we're talking about facts, there's no subjectivity. There is no, well, is there this, is there that? Well, how do I feel about this? Facts are hard, they're cold, they're awesome. So Kansas is going to be something heavy in facts, and if we were playing a game much like the Family Feud and had the top 7 answers on the board of what other kids or adults Kansas could be, top 7 things I've seen: dinosaurs, Legos, trains, movies, weather, anything that has to do with the military or airplanes, or anything that has to do with computers or electronic games, video games, specifically the video game Minecraft. Those seem to be the top 7 Kansases or Kansai. I don't know what the plural of Kansas is, so I'm not going to get stuck in that tangent. One presentation, I went on for 15 minutes for that, so I will spare you that version of this presentation. But whatever that Kansas is, that's where we are going to feel normal. There is one thing to know about Kansas, though, and this, in my opinion, is the #1 most important statement about autism, and that is, if you've met one person with autism, you've only met one person with autism. One person's Kansas could be the next person's North Dakota. And of those 7 I gave, yes, those are 7 of the most common, but Kansas for a person could be something way off the beaten path, such as the history of motorcycle helmet production, or maybe something more common, such as world economics or gases of the sun or something like that. But whatever it is, that is where we are going to feel normal, and because of that, Kansas is everything. We're going to do everything we can in a conversation to try to steer it towards our Kansas. We're going to attempt to get it there because that is where we are going to feel normal. And for me, well, Kansas for me most certainly is auto racing. Growing up, I wanted to be a race car driver. That's the only thing I ever envisioned myself doing, but I came really close to making it in racing. It just didn't work out, but as a driver, but stayed in the sport as a flagger. Been doing that since age 14, and last year I became the flagman of the NTT IndyCar series, so absolutely can't believe it. It's still a dream. Well, while I was writing, I didn't just want to write, I'm on the autism spectrum, here's why it's difficult. No. I wanted to come up with ways to describe the whys, the mechanics. And when I learned of, as I learned of how film is made, I never knew, but as I learned that, I went, wait, that's sort of how my brain works. So I came up with this concept. So for this concept, imagine the mind on the autism spectrum having a camera that uses real film. And anytime there is a new event, a new situation, a new person, a new anything, imagine the mind on the autism spectrum taking a snapshot, printing the film, and putting it in a portfolio. Now, anytime that situation or what have you is duplicated, we on the autism spectrum, we already know what's going to happen, because what this concept states is that the Asperger mind, or mind on the autism spectrum, is controlled by firsts, and everything must always be like it was the first time. So whatever happens first always has to happen. A couple examples to back this up. When I was 12, my dad we went to the AMA Supercross series in St. Louis, and over the course of the evening, we went to the concession stand where I got hungry, so we went to the concession stand, and my dad found out hot dogs were somehow $8 and soda $7. He said no. But he did say, though, was that we would eat at a diner on the way home. And we did. 1 year later, we go to the same race. Now, I know what's going to happen because I have this film in my mind to go by. I know exactly what's going to happen. I know I'm going to get hungry. I know I'm going to ask for food. I know he's going to see the prices and say no. And after he says no, he's going to say, we're going to eat at that diner. Everything happened to the letter except he didn't say we would eat at that diner. However, I knew we were, and the trap I fell into that night, and this is another one of the 5 most important statements about autism, in my opinion, we can operate under the system of I think, therefore you should know. If I think it, if I know it, if I expect it, if I remember it, you do too. So since I had this memory of what we did the previous year, and I know we're going to stop, I don't need to let my dad know it, because since I know it, he already knows it. Well, we got near the diner, and I did not hear my dad's turn signal come on, and that's important because I'm a rule stickler. I used to let my dad know every traffic law he ever broke. It was probably really cute when I was 5. I still do it. I am not a good passenger whatsoever. Case in point, 3 years ago, a race in Austin, Texas. I was picked up by the series PR lady, and oh, she was having a bad time. Just leaving the airport, I counted 4 infractions that I let her know about, and then there was an improper merge on the interstate, to which she then spiked the brakes real fast, and she said, Aaron, I have left my kids on the side of the road for less than what you're doing. Which really made me think about her as a parent on leaving kids on the side of the road. But anyway, we got to the hotel, and we were headed right towards a curb that jutted out really weird. I didn't say anything. We crashed into it. The right front rim was destroyed. And she said, Aaron, where were you on that one? And I said, you didn't tell me. You told me not to talk. So we can't win on the spectrum. Can't win. Anyway, my dad's turn signal didn't come on, and there went the diner, and I turned to my dad really confused, and I said, Dad, diner, 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 diner. And well, we turned around every year, or turned around that night, and then we proceeded to eat there every single year from 1996 onward, all the way to 2011, April 9th, 2011 to be exact. I was in Joplin, Missouri that evening giving a presentation, so that streak came to an end. The only thing I'll say about that presentation is be very grateful you weren't there for that one. I talked about this for 30 minutes. I needed tissues. It was a train wreck. So be very grateful that a decade has moved on. Be very grateful. Another example, this also has to do with food. This concept does apply more than just food. My first presentation, though, I was really hungry, so the concepts or the examples I thought of happened to be food, and since whatever happens first always has to happen, I'm stuck giving these examples. When I was 5, the elders of my dad's church in Indianapolis treated the family to lunch at the Olive Garden. Now that concerned my dad because up to that point in time in my life, I only ate 2.5 foods. I either ate macaroni and cheese, hot dogs, or pizza on a good day. Still really wasn't buddy-buddy with pizza yet, but now, pizza mode. I'm hungry. So those were my 2.5 foods, and I wanted a hot dog that day. But the Olive Garden, being an Italian chain, they don't serve hot dogs. As my dad informed me by saying, Aaron, it's not in their business model. What? Come on, I was 5. I didn't know what that meant. Bottom line, no hot dog. My dad looked over the menu and ordered the manicotti, figuring that would be the closest thing to macaroni and cheese. So he ordered it. Food came out. I went on a hunger protest because I wanted a hot dog, but I wasn't going to get a hot dog, and I quickly realized I was either going to eat the manicotti or not get food. So I tried it, and I liked it. I liked it a lot. I liked it so much that every time thereafter when we went to the Olive Garden, it wasn't the Olive Garden in my mind. It was Manicottiville, because that's the only thing they served. When I was in 5th grade, I finally tried the breadsticks. When I was 18, I finally tried the salads. I used to joke that trying something new is a tetanus shot. You only need a booster once a decade. So I tried something new out in California last month. So I don't need to try anything new till September 2031. So great feeling. But unfortunately, July of 2010 got asked a question at a presentation. Okay, Aaron, you go to the Olive Garden, you get the same thing every time. What would you do if they said they were out of manicotti? Well, I laughed it off because 1, I don't do hypothetical that well, but 2, they've had it forever. 3 days later, I go to the Olive Garden, I order the manicotti and cherry Coke, waitress leaves, waitress comes back, places the cherry Coke on the table, and she said, sir, as of last week, we no longer carry manicotti. You what? Now, I had no idea what to do. No idea what to do, no idea what to say, and I think I kind of creeped the waitress out because I stared at her like this for a good 40 seconds. But I was stuck playing the processing game. I had no idea what to do, no idea what to say. It took me 40 seconds to finally realize I had to ask for a menu because I didn't know what else they served. And I got the menu and oh my goodness, who knew there were so many different things to order? What is the right answer? Right was whatever happened first, so it took me way too long to figure something else. I ordered something else. I don't remember what I had. Even if it would have been the best meal I ever had, I still would have not liked it because it wasn't what was first. And to answer that parent on what I would do if they said they were out of manicotti, I actually called for a boycott of the Olive Garden until they brought the manicotti back. And Unfortunately, I didn't stipulate bring it back forever. It came back on their seasonal menu in 2013, so their lasagna's not bad, but they should just bring back the manicotti. Well, I completely butchered one of my lines there because I was supposed to tell you, so go back about 3 minutes or 2 minutes when I said I was a picky eater. I also have a rule that food is never ever upon any circumstances allowed to touch on a plate. Food is supposed to stay nice in its own little area. Separate plates work great too, but if you could see my dad and aunt's plate at Thanksgiving, it is a haphazard pile of chaos. It is every single food of Thanksgiving piled into one big blob, and it is wrong on so many levels. And it actually does have levels because it's wrong. And my aunt, every Thanksgiving, she loves saying, "Hey, Aaron, sweetie, look, the food section. Look, I love you. Look." Fittingly enough, as you enter her house, she got a doormat specifically for me, and it proudly states that you're not in Kansas anymore. So she recently moved from Washington, D.C. to where I live in St. Louis, across town, and the first thing she unpacked was that doormat. So yeah, Thanksgiving's coming, people. The blob's about to come out of hibernation, so prepare. Well, to give you an example that has nothing to do with food, I was that student in school that if we had a substitute, I could almost guarantee you at some point in time my hand was going up saying, that's not the way Mrs. Ginger does it. Yep, that was me. Routine and schedule was supposed to be, how it was one day, it was supposed to be every day. And my most infamous run-in with the substitute was in 2nd grade, and in this sub's defense, every other kid in the class thought this was the most awesome system ever. She came in, she put a wheel on the board. Now, typically, I love things that spin, and when I discovered the game show Wheel of Fortune at the age of 3, my dad had to hold me back because I was trying to run into that television because it was the most sensory, euphoric, awesome, blissful, amazing thing I've ever seen. And to this day, I still think they need to get rid of the contestants, get rid of the puzzles, and just give us 30 minutes of that wheel spinning. That right there would be award-winning television. Let me tell you, beautiful. Anyway, though, this wheel, though, I don't know where it came from, but it needed to go back because it was segmented into different subjects. She would spin the wheel, and whatever subject came up next, all the subjects were up there. Whichever subject came up next would be the next subject of the day. So the day was totally randomized. No. I was the poster child for preparedness. All my books, all my supplies were in the exact chronological order that I needed them, and here came this teacher to destroy my system. So naturally, first hour, hand came up, that's not the way Mrs. Ginger does it. And she was polite about it, and she said, "Yes, Aaron, I know." Spun the wheel. 2nd hour, carbon copy. 3rd hour, carbon copy. 4th hour, I finally had a way to debate this system. I said, no, we have a schedule on the wall, which we did. The wheel was here. Our daily printed visual schedule was over there. And as I pointed it, she looked at it and she said, "Oh, okay." She walked over, ripped it off the wall, threw it on the floor, and spun the wheel. Then 5th hour, my hand started to go up, and she didn't even, even before I could get my hand all the way up, she said, "Yes, Aaron, I know," and spun the wheel, and she ignored me the rest of the week. We had her an entire week. When Mrs. Ginger came back, she went to vacation, and I gathered it was in Florida. Well, that week, it just so happened to be warmer in Indianapolis than it was in Florida. So, I let her know that, and she would have had a much better time if she just stayed at home. Well, this is a soda can. It represents a potential, and keyword here is potential, associative memory system. I have a videographic memory. It's like having a DVD library of everything that's happened. However, it doesn't apply to people. When it comes to people and my memories, they are blurred out, like an undercover news show. If I see a person again, I'll recognize them. But out of sight, out of mind, I'm not going to be able to I had a girlfriend for many years in the early 2000s. I can't tell you much about her, except maybe she was on the short side. Maybe. Don't know. Because of this, I have to remember people through other means. And it may be in words, songs, numbers, smells, but the #1 way I remember a person is through physical items. And when I was 12, I had a friend stay at my house all night. Now, this was a rare occurrence. I didn't have many friends. I didn't have many friends stay the night. So this was a big deal. And over the course of the evening, he drank a Minute Maid orange soda. And when he was done, he placed it on my dresser. Very quickly, that soda can, it was more than a soda can to me. It was my connection to my friend. I knew somebody knew me. I knew someone through that soda can. So that soda can stayed there a while. A couple days, a couple weeks, a couple months, then 6 months, 1 year, 3 years. 5 years later, I went to a race car driving school in Las Vegas. And while I was out there, my mom thought she would do me this really big favor and clean my room. First thing I noticed when I got home wasn't that I could see the floor for the first time in half a year. Some people on the spectrum can be borderline OCD when it comes to having things be clean, and then you have me. I moved into my current place February of 2013, and there are still some boxes that are sitting where they were sat the day I moved in, so I should probably get on that. So things sit a while. So no, first thing I noticed wasn't that I could see the floor for the first time in half a year. First thing I noticed was that soda can, which meant so much to me, gone. Tossed out like a piece of trash. And in my mom's defense, that's exactly what it was. How could she have known that that can meant anything? Odds are, before that day, if she would have asked me if it meant something, I would have said, I don't know. I don't know. End result, I cried more over the loss of that soda can than I would over the eventual loss of my 2 cats and dog, and they all lived to be over the age of 16 and were my friends for many years, but they weren't a person. That soda can was my connection to a person, and poof, gone, deleted from history. As I said, not every person on the spectrum is going to share this, and it is mentioned, at least in the DSM, that people on the autism spectrum may exhibit an inappropriate attachment to objects. To me, it's not inappropriate at all. It is my way to categorize and catalog the memories and truly remember a person. So what may be an inanimate object to you may absolutely mean the world to us, whether it's a memory of a person we no longer know or a town we moved from or whatever it may be inanimate to you, but may mean the absolute world to us. While I was writing, I was struggling on how to describe social anxiety, the social fear I have going out in public. And when I learned of the theatrical term, the fourth wall, I finally had it. And usually I have a picture of a stage. It's much easier when I'm on a stage. But if I were in a production right now, there'd be 4 walls. The 2 side walls, the third wall is a backdrop, and the fourth wall separating me, the actor, from you, the audience. So if I were an internationally renowned traveling actor, I could envision there is a solid wall right here. I'm in a room, contained room. You don't exist. Now there is another term out there called breaking the fourth wall, which I did with that term right there, acknowledging that you are out there. In terms of breakage of the fourth wall, not too many plays do it. To give you a movie example, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, plenty breakage of the fourth wall there, looking to the camera, acknowledging. The news, great example, always looking at the camera, knowing you're watching. But let's say you go to a play, and most plays don't break it. You're in the front row. The main actor's on stage giving the big, heavy, powerful lines that the play's known for. And let's say mid-monologue, all of a sudden, he walks right to the edge of the stage, looks you in the eye, and goes, yeah, excuse me, yeah, what do you think I should do next? You have the script memorized. Let's say this play is your Kansas. You know everything there is to know about this play. But at that moment in time, I can almost guarantee you, you are on the express train to North Dakota. You're going to be over processing. You're going to have no idea what's going on, how it's going on, or why it's going on. You're going to be over processing just the fact, should you respond? Much less what you'll respond with. You'll be stuck going, do I respond? What is going on? For myself, that is very much what going out in public is like. Every random interaction is much like that. And I may know the script of a conversation. I struggle with common greetings. If you want to watch me squirm, start a conversation by going, hey, Aaron, how are you? Okay, how are you? I struggle with it. How are you? What's the criteria for how I'm doing? What's the time frame for how I'm doing? I know the script of it. Most how are yous are empty, and you're just supposed to say, fine. how are you? And that's it. But no, I take it literally, and be careful. If something wacky's happened in the past 24 hours, I will be more than happy to let you know how I'm doing. Such as yesterday, for some reason, Delta flew me. I don't know. Originally, when I booked the ticket to fly to Syracuse to come here, it was very straightforward. But the end ticket after changes was St. Louis to LaGuardia, LaGuardia down to Atlanta, Atlanta to Syracuse. I don't know why I had to do a figure 8 to get up here, but it was a long day of travel for no reason. But again, the person at the hotel yesterday checking in when they asked how I was doing got the 10-minute version of that story. So they made the mistake of how I was doing, and something wacky had happened, and I probably didn't pick up on the social cues that they didn't care, but they asked how I was doing. That's how I was doing. The number one thing, though, that breaks the fourth wall, eye contact. A high percentage of us on the autism spectrum struggle with it. The majority of us are going to shy away from it. That doesn't mean everyone. You may come across a rare individual or two that makes inappropriate amounts of eye contact, as if they're always in the midst of a stare-down championship tournament. Rare, but can happen. For myself, though, I'm shying away from it. Several reasons why. One, I learned at a young age that random eye contact initiates a random conversation, and since random conversations equate to processing, which I don't like and get uneasy about and struggle with, therefore, I am shying away from eye contact. That's why I say, if you see me outside of here, you're not going to recognize me, because I am always looking down. Because if I'm looking down and you're standing right there and you say hello or anything, and I keep walking, I'm not exactly being rude, because you don't know if I saw you or not. Here's a secret. Yes, I most certainly did see you, because my peripheral vision's really good, but you're not going to know it at that moment in time, so I'm not being rude. Secondly, once a conversation is in play, if I make eye contact, I'm overwhelmed. I said I'm not a good judge at facial expressions, whether you're happy, sad, mad, bored. However, I'm still receiving the signals. I'm registering, okay, that was a head nod, that was a head tilt, yep, that was a head tilt, wait, that was a laugh, that most certainly was a laugh, wait, was that a sarcastic laugh like a or was it a real laugh like a ha-ha-ha? Huh. I'm gonna be receiving all this information that I get stuck playing the processing game on. And eventually I'm gonna be stuck so busy analyzing the physical picture, I'm not gonna hear another word you have to say. So in a conversation, I can do one of two things. Either look you in the eye and potentially not hear a word you have to say, or look near you, around you, past you, and hear everything you have to say. Now don't get me wrong, eye contact should be encouraged, absolutely, but in certain situations, especially if there's more gravity to the situation or more processing, I'm gonna have to look at the most static point in the room. I really like corners because nothing is going on up there, and that's really gonna let me focus without being overwhelmed by the physical picture. Well, I gotta say, I love games. Games are amazing, games are awesome, and the number one reason why games are amazing are rules. Rules are awesome, rules are great, and when I was 1988, when I was 5, there was only one thing I wanted for Christmas, and that was Monopoly. Probably another early sign I was on the autism spectrum, because most 5-year-olds are not clamoring to play Monopoly, much less dreaming of the day of organizing a 3-way trade to offload Pennsylvania Avenue so Connecticut Avenue can be picked up to finally get that pesky Illinois Avenue. Yeah, not high up on most 5-year-olds' list, but it was for me. I did get my wish on Christmas of '88, got Monopoly, had the rules memorized that night, whole family played the next day. I beat everyone, including my dad, and he has never played Monopoly since. He has been Monopoly free since '88. Somehow, I'm the only one in my family that loves games. I have no idea how that happened. But I absolutely have to give a public service announcement right now, because there are some of you out there that play Monopoly with house rules. Maybe a free parking jackpot. Where is that in the rule book? Double the salary for landing on go. Oh, that most certainly is not anywhere that, and there's so many other house rules. And if you are one of those types, I don't know how to put this kindly. Shame on you. The rules are printed. They're called the official rules of Monopoly. Please read them, adhere by them. Thank you. Now, there is a strong reason why I give this public service announcement, and it is this. If every person in the entire world plays Monopoly with the official rules, no matter where you go, the rules are going to be the same. You can travel 6,000 miles away from home and play the same game. I did see the Norwegian version of Monopoly when I was there 5 years ago. I couldn't pronounce any of the properties. even if I tried for a decade because there were accent marks I have no idea what you're supposed to do with. And I tried foreign languages. I cannot get a handle on those. But I could still play the game. I could point to the properties. The pictures on the cards were the same. There I was, 5,000 miles away from home, playing the same game. And yet, when it comes to the social rule book, I'm still trying to find that one size fits all, everybody plays by this set. Because so often with social rules, they go from this, then they go to that, then they go back to this, then they go back to that, then they go to something they've never been before, then they go back to this, and we on the spectrum, by the time we have adapted to the new change, they've already changed again, and we're left wondering, what just happened? If playing Monopoly were a metaphor for socializing on the autism spectrum, think of it this way. You just rolled a 9 and landed directly on Boardwalk, which you cannot roll a 9 and land directly on Boardwalk without the help of the chance card. But while you're processing that logic, I'm just going to keep making it more confusing, because currently on Boardwalk there are 29 hotels and 17 houses. You'd actually need 3 Monopoly sets to have that many hotels. That's way against the rules. I don't even want to calculate what the rent's going to be. But oh, by the way, there's a king being checked by the knight that just landed on Community Chest. And I hope you have some really good letters to play off the word frog, which is currently on luxury tax, because you just landed on a triple word space. Huh? What is going on in that example? I just described chaos. 6 games are going on at once. How do you decipher what's going on? For us on the autism spectrum, that's the best way I can relate what it's like. We may not understand the rules and play of what's going on in that moment. To give you an example, this did not happen to me, but it is one of the pinnacle examples of just not understanding the social rules that were in play. This happened in St. Louis, October 2013. An 18-year-old with Asperger's was pulled over by an officer. Well, this 18-year-old, he had the Missouri driving handbook memorized. He studied more for that than he did his SATs, which a very gifted student. So he knew what lights and sirens behind him meant. Unfortunately, that's the only thing he understood of a traffic stop. So when the officer came and tapped on the window, well, nonverbal social cues, what do those mean? The person on the spectrum looked at the officer, waited for directions, none came. He looked back through the windshield. That made the officer none too happy, so the officer pounded the glass really hard. Now the person on the spectrum's getting annoyed because a noisy racket's being made, so he looks at the officer and goes, "What?" and looks forward again. Now the officer, absolutely irate, pounds the glass and says, "Sir, roll down your window, now." Person did so, and he very calmly asked the officer, "Oh, well, why didn't you say so in the first place?" Story goes downhill from there. The officer then asks the unfortunate worded question of, "Sir, can I see your license?" Person on the spectrum thought about it for a moment and said, "No." Then in the most stern, matter-of-fact, I mean business voice possible, the officer said, "Sir, can I see your license now?" The person on the spectrum knew something was up, and he thought kind of long to figure out what was going on. And again, he laughed when he said, "No, you still can't see my license." Well, he was immediately arrested for disobeying the orders of an officer and obstruction of a peace officer's duty, taken to the station. Thank goodness the officers there had autism training. They were able to read between the lines, and no charges were filed. But per protocol, his mom did have to come to pick him up. She's in tears. This was a straight A student, Miss Valedictorian by a fraction of a point. So picking her son up at the police station was not something she ever thought she'd have to do. She's in tears. She gets him, and she said, "Son, why? Why didn't you help the officer?" That 18-year-old, nobody had explained what happened yet. He was still just as confused as he was the moment he got arrested. And he said, "Mom, I have no idea what's going on. I tried to help the officer. He kept asking if he could see my license. How could he? It was in my wallet." For those on the spectrum that aren't understanding the rules, or figures of speech, all those complicated things we have in English, non-literal statements, it can be an absolute minefield to try to understand. Can I see your license? That's a yes or no question. There is nothing that even hints or implies if you're taking it at literal value that the wallet needs to come out, license needs to be found, taken out, easier said than done, and handed to the officer. 5-step process, only implied. And we on the autism spectrum, we may not pick up on what is being expected of us because we may think, well, in school, I was an expert at answering rhetorical questions. I always got in trouble for those, or not in trouble, but the teacher said, don't answer that. Well, don't answer. You asked a question. I'm giving you the best possible answer I can give. Furthering the game concept, for us on the autism spectrum, imagine if playing chess were socializing, which this is a big screen here, so this concept works a lot better when I say imagine playing as black and you can't see any of your opponent's pieces. When a screen's this big, I can't really cover up what's going on. But just imagine, wipe all of white's pieces off the board. They still have the same power, but you can't see any of them. But you still have to play the game. That's what socializing can be like for us. We're playing the game having no idea where we stand, what the score is, what move's a good move, what good's a bad move. And I've made bad moves before. I had that girlfriend that I don't really remember. She too, December of 2003, on my diagnosis, got some bad information. So she started backing away from me slowly. I had to figure out if she still liked me. Most people could probably call, meet up, and say, hey, are we still good? Everything okay? I couldn't do that. That involved talking about emotions. So I had to get creative, I had to get crafty, and oh, I came up with a great idea. In my mind, this was a win-win-win situation. This would win the proverbial chess game. So to see if she still liked me, I decided I had to break up with her, and I did so on Christmas, and I did so via text message. Yeah. Now, in my mind, she'd simply call and protest, and everything would be fine. I stayed up till 6 a.m. Oh, the phone never rang. And end result, I've only talked to her twice since Christmas 2003. I had no intention of actually breaking up, but I had no idea. I could not see the chess game of if I move here, that's going to end the game this way. I had no idea. End result, I've only talked to her twice now since Christmas 2003. And at the end of the day, I'm okay that that nuclear meltdown of a breakup did happen because the first chapter I wrote in my book was about that relationship. So without that, I don't know if I ever would have started writing. So when the book got published, the dedication, it was a no-brainer. It went to her. So not the happiest of endings, but not the saddest of endings because I'm doing what I'm doing because of that. Now, while I was writing, this will be, I haven't gotten around to finishing or publishing my second book yet, but this is the anchor chapter of the second book. And while I wrote my book, if you do read Finding Kansas, I've read it once. It's very difficult for me to read what I have ever written. So on the decade anniversary of me starting to write, I did a Finding Kansas revisited blog series where I actually read my own book. I could not believe how hopeful my book was because while I was writing it, hope was not a word. Well, I would use hope only if it had the suffix less after it. My conversations to my dad every day was, Dad, it's hopeless. Why should I try? Dad, it's hopeless. It's hopeless. It's hopeless. And if he ever felt like that, he never let me know it. But in 2009, I went through a parent training program by an autism service provider in St. Louis. It's a 3-week parent training course that a young kid on the spectrum and their parents go through. And through it, the session I went through, I saw a 6-year-old say their first word. And that went against everything I believed at that point that the situation's hopeless. And I immediately came up with this concept that day. I remember exactly everything about this concept, where I was. And I scared everyone in the room because I slammed the table in excitement and said, I got it! So I scared everyone because I'm not usually loud in a room. But for this concept, imagine the minds on the autism spectrum as being wet cement. And let's say we want a patio. We're going to have to work with it relatively quickly to go from this to that. Now, if you've ever been in the Midwest, specifically St. Louis in the summertime, it's maybe 105 degrees out with 255% humidity, creating a heat index of 325 degrees. Number slightly exaggerated. Not by that much. It is hot. And let's say we are trying to finish that patio in the oppressive heat of St. Louis in the summertime. We finished that bottom half, but that top half, no, we're going to come back in October, mid-70s, no humidity, and finish it then. Well, however we finished that in July, or however we left it set, when we come back 4 months later, that isn't exactly going to be moldable or shapeable. It's going to be set in stone. Now, that's what I believed up until I saw that parent training program, that there was no room for growth. That's that. Well, I was wrong, because then I realized, oh, wait a minute. Sometimes we may need to resort to sledgehammers. Sometimes we may need to resort to jackhammers to break up what's been laid. But there's always that ability to find wet cement. Then I remember what my 4th grade teacher taught us, which she never used the test key, so I don't know if this is completely legitimate, and I don't want it to be busted if it is, but she said the Hoover Dam in Nevada is going to be drying for the next 4,000 years because it's going to take that long to cure all the way. With that being so, there's always going to be that ability to find that wet cement. It may take more work, but we're always going to be able to find it. So with growth, with intervention, with anything, there's always that ability to find wet cement. There's always that ability to grow. And, well, every day is earlier than tomorrow, but there's always that chance for growth. And that was the difference between '09 and before, because as I had those conversations with my dad, I really thought that it was hopeless, and it took a while, but I realized that was completely false. Well, things I've heard at book signings and presentations around the country. My very first presentation, and this was just very first book signing, this was just a precursor to my career. A couple parents were there, and they were talking to me, and they were really trying to get a diagnosis, and they were having no luck. Their pediatrician didn't know what it was, and their school district, the school counselor laughed at them when they brought up their fear. Now, the kid was there. I'm not a doctor. I can't give a diagnosis, but this was the quintessential case of Asperger's. I have not seen a more perfect case for what the bullet points are. But the school district, the school counselor said, wait, you think your child has Asperger's? No, there's no way. 1, he gets good grades, and 2, he can talk. So even if he has it, which he doesn't, even if he has it, don't worry about it. Every child's going to outgrow it by the age of 16. Well, I heard that. I wasn't the most sympathetic person in the world when I heard that, because I was just thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going to sell a book? No way. It takes me a while to process things. I had 4 more book signings in St. Louis, 1 in Indiana, and everywhere I went, I heard that same story. Now, I'm not picking on any one profession. It wasn't always a school counselor. Sometimes it was a psychiatrist, a neurologist. I hope and think we have 99% great everybody's in the workplace. It only takes that 1% to throw a wrench into the whole process. And each time I heard a wrench story, I was going, another book, yeah. Well, then I went through the parent training program, and a couple weeks thereafter, Autism Speaks randomly gave me 2 tickets to go to the Autism Speaks 400 NASCAR race in Dover, Delaware. So I went, and I got to say, I was kind of angry at that race because that should have been me out there. Although I took my aunt, the You're Not in Kansas Anymore doormat aunt, she lived in Washington, D.C., and taking her to that race was one of the biggest mistakes in my life. Her favorite sport is tennis. Her favorite event, Wimbledon, due to the classiness and highness of it. Wimbledon, NASCAR race, not quite the same. When they said, gentlemen, start your engines, she was tugging on me going, Aaron, does that mean it's over? Can we go now? I so badly wanted to say, who's not in Kansas anymore? I didn't, though, because I was having a bad time. That should have been me out there. I didn't say how close I made it to being a race car driver. I was a professional driving instructor. I had a sponsor. Everything was right until it wasn't. And there I was in the grandstands. What was I ever going to do with my life? Oh, I was furious. Race started, race progressed, and Jimmy Johnson won yet another race that year. And as he crossed the line, I finally had the thought, wait a minute. What good did Jimmy Johnson do by winning that race that day? Who did he help? Next day, I drove up to New York City to meet the doctor that wrote the endorsement in my book, and she asked me a life-changing question. She said, Aaron, now that you have a book out, do you still want to race? And I answered, in a non-literal fashion, yeah. I still want to race, but it's a new race now. The race is to spread as much awareness and understanding as possible, because there is so much hope, there is so much potential in everyone in the autism spectrum, but only if there's understanding. And besides that, it should almost be criminal for parents to be told, don't worry about it, grow it. Because if parents of a 3-year-old buy into that and the age of 16 rolls around, that's 13 years of concrete that didn't have to happen. So yes, I'm in a new race now, and the race is to beat the concrete. And as I answered that, I realized I had a new calling in life. I always wanted to be a race car driver. I'm now racing to spread as much awareness and understanding as possible. Still can't believe it. It's an absolute dream that as a 1040th presentation here. And I wish there were video, or I wish I would have been a ride. I just wish you could have seen the difference of when I started to write to now. It's been a ride. Well, I do have a blog. I think you can get to it via aaronlikens.com. I haven't blogged since 2017 though. That's okay. There's about 1,400 blog posts if you can get there. My book website, findingkansas.com. I am on Facebook. I have an author page, which pages are now harder to find. I think it's facebook.com/Autism Ambassador to find it. That link changes. They update every month. And I am on Twitter. I do know that's my Twitter handle. I don't tweet that much, except maybe racetrack photos from the morning. So I'm not all that active there. Any questions, anything I covered or didn't cover? I know that was a lot of information, and I did get my main point, so I am happy that I didn't forget all my stories. Not doing this for 20 months, I'm okay with how I did. Question, yes? Is there a word that autism goes under? Learning disability, I've heard this used to be a name of one of the forms of autism, pervasive developmental disability. So I know some people say it's a mental illness. It's not. It's something that is lifelong, though. Some people, though, with early intervention can test off the spectrum later in life. It's still going to be there on undertones. But a learning disability can be one of them. Any more? Going once, going twice. Well, if you have something you don't want to ask, I will hang around and gladly answer them. Thanks for taking time out of your day to come see me present. It means a lot. I am so thankful to be back here, or anywhere for that matter, because there has not been the same amount of awareness and understanding going on for the past 20 years or 20 months. It seems like 20 years, but thanks for coming out. It means a lot to me, and thank you.